Chapter 1: Arrival in New York.
My name is Madeline Carter, but most people call me Maddy. I grew up in a small town where buildings were never taller than a church or a shopping mall. All my life, I dreamed of seeing New York. I had seen it in movies, in books, and on postcards. It looked like a place full of lights, people, and endless dreams. One summer, I finally bought a ticket and told myself, Maddy, it is time to go and see the city that never sleeps. The plane ride was long, and I could not rest. I kept looking through the small window. When the pilot finally said, "We are landing in New York," my heart started beating faster. As the plane touched the ground, I felt like my whole life was changing. I grabbed my bag, walked through the busy airport, and smiled at the big sign that said, "Welcome to New York." Outside, the air was hot and full of car horns. Yellow taxis rushed past, and people walked so fast like they were late for something important. I felt small and a little lost, but also full of excitement. I got into a taxi and told the driver the address of a cheap hostel I had booked online. He just nodded and started driving without a word. The car moved through wide highways, and then I saw it, the skyline of New York City. Skyscrapers stood tall like giants, shining in the evening sun. I almost cried because I could not believe I was really there. The hostel was in Manhattan near a small park. The room was tiny with just a bed, a window, and a shared bathroom. But to me, it felt perfect. I put my bag down and decided not to waste a single minute. I went outside, walking slowly through the busy streets. People were selling hot dogs on the corners, children were playing in the park, and couples were laughing while eating ice cream. For the first time, I did not feel like a visitor. I felt like maybe I could belong here. I stopped at a food cart and bought a pretzel. The man who sold it to me smiled and said, "First time in New York?" I nodded, and he laughed. "You'll never forget this city." His words stayed with me all evening.
That night, I walked to Times Square. When I saw the bright lights and giant screens, I froze. The world around me glowed in colors, and people from every country stood with cameras, smiling and pointing. It felt like the heart of the world. I whispered to myself, "Maddy, you are finally here." Chapter 2: First Steps in the Big City. When I stepped outside the bus station, New York felt like another world. My name is Maddy Carter, and this was the first time I was alone in such a huge city. The air smelled of hot dogs, roasted nuts, and car smoke all at once. Taxis honked loudly, people rushed past me, and tall glass towers touched the clouds. I held my small bag tight, afraid someone might steal it. Back home in Ohio, people walked slowly, and everyone knew each other. Here, nobody even looked at me. I wanted to find my hostel first. I had written the address on a paper, but the letters were shaking because my hand was sweating. I asked a man in a suit, "Excuse me, can you tell me where West 45th Street is?" He didn't stop. He just walked away, talking on his phone. My heart sank. But then a kind old woman selling pretzels smiled at me. She pointed and said, "Sweetheart, go 2 blocks down," and then left. I thanked her, and for the first time, I felt a little safe. Walking with my bag, I saw so many small things that amazed me. A man played guitar on the corner while a child danced. A group of tourists laughed as they tried to take selfies with a street performer dressed like the Statue of Liberty. I even saw a man juggling fire sticks, and the crowd clapped loudly. I thought, New York is full of stories, and maybe I will have one too. When I reached the hostel, the receptionist gave me a key. My room had 3 bunk beds. 2 girls were already inside. One was from Brazil and the other from Japan. We introduced ourselves and laughed when we realized we all got lost finding this place. That night, I lay in my bunk and listened to the city sounds from the window, sirens, music, and voices. I couldn't sleep, but it didn't matter. My heart was full of excitement. Tomorrow, I would start exploring. Before I closed my eyes, I promised myself, "Maddy, you came here with nothing but dreams. Don't be scared. This city will test you, but you will survive." With that thought, I smiled in the dark and waited for the morning to come. Chapter 3: The First Challenge. The next morning, sunlight slipped through the thin curtains, waking me up early. I stretched on my bunk bed and whispered to myself, "Today is the day, Maddy. Be brave." I put on my only pair of clean jeans, a white t-shirt, and my worn sneakers. My heart beat fast as I walked out of the hostel, carrying a notebook where I had written my goals. Find work. Explore the city. Don't give up. My first stop was a cafe near Times Square. I had read online that many travelers found jobs in small cafes. The smell of coffee pulled me inside. The waitress at the counter smiled politely, but when I asked if they needed help, she shook her head. "Sorry, we're full," she said kindly. My face grew hot. I forced a smile and said, "Thank you." When I stepped outside, I took a deep breath. "Okay, Maddy, one rejection doesn't mean the end." I kept walking. At another shop, a bakery, the owner frowned at my accent and said, "No experience? Then no job." That one hurt. I bought a small croissant just to hide my sadness. Sitting on a bench, I ate slowly while pigeons gathered around me, pecking at the crumbs. A little boy threw a piece of bread to them and laughed, which made me smile too. At least the pigeons were happy to see me. In the afternoon, I decided to explore Central Park. The green trees and calm lake felt like another world inside the busy city. I saw families having picnics, joggers running, and couples rowing boats. A man was painting the skyline on his canvas, and I stood quietly watching him. When he noticed me, he said, "New York is not easy, but it gives back what you give." His words stayed in my heart like a secret gift. That evening, I returned to the hostel, tired but not broken. The Brazilian girl, Sophia, asked, Any luck with work? I shook my head, but I smiled. Not yet. Tomorrow is another day. We laughed together, and it felt good to share my struggle with someone who understood. Before sleeping, I wrote in my notebook, Day 1, no job, but many lessons. Keep moving forward. As I closed my eyes, I knew the city was already testing me, but I also knew I would not give up. Chapter 4, The Unexpected Turn. The next morning, I woke up early, excited for another adventure. New York was a city that never slept, and neither did my curiosity. I had marked Central Park on my list, and I couldn't wait to see it. I grabbed a bagel from a little corner shop near my hotel. The man behind the counter smiled and said, "First time in New York?" I nodded, and he winked. "Then you gotta try the cream cheese." Trust me. I laughed and took his advice. It was delicious, soft, warm, and exactly the kind of breakfast that made me feel like a real New Yorker. When I walked into Central Park, I felt like I had stepped into another world. Tall green trees, calm lakes, people jogging, couples rowing little boats. It was peaceful, almost magical. I sat on a bench and watched children chasing bubbles made by a street performer. A woman jogged past with her dog, and the dog stopped to sniff my shoe, making me laugh. I pulled out my notebook and started writing little thoughts, but then a man walked up. He was holding paintings of the city and asked if I wanted to buy one. I smiled and told him I had only a small budget, but he still gave me a tiny sketch of the Brooklyn Bridge. "For luck," he said. That small act of kindness touched me. As I kept walking, I saw people playing guitars, dancers performing, and even a man dressed as a statue, completely frozen. A group of teenagers ran past me, laughing loudly, and almost bumped into me. One of them quickly turned back and said, "Sorry, miss." I smiled and waved. New York was full of energy, sometimes too much, but I loved it. Then something unexpected happened. I was near the Bethesda fountain when a sudden shout caught my attention. A young woman was crying because she couldn't find her little brother. People gathered, looking worried. My heart raced, and without thinking, I joined the search. We all spread out. After 10 tense minutes, a man spotted the boy chasing pigeons near the stairs. The woman hugged him tight, and everyone clapped. I felt relief, like I had saved someone in my own family. Later, I took a horse carriage ride around the park. The driver, an older man, told me stories about celebrities he had once given rides to. He said, "You never know who you'll meet in New York. That's the beauty of this city." His words stayed with me. On my way out, I bought roasted peanuts from a street cart, the smell reminding me of fairs back home. I ate slowly, thinking about how each moment in this city was a new surprise. That day, Central Park wasn't just a park. It was a whole world of its own, full of kindness, laughter, and small adventures that I would never forget. Chapter 5, Nights That Shined. The nights in New York felt like magic to me. One evening, I put on a light jacket and walked to Times Square. The lights there were brighter than anything I had ever seen. Huge screens flashed ads, music played from every corner, and people from many countries stood with their phones taking pictures. A man in a Spider-Man costume waved at me and I laughed. I bought a pretzel from a street cart and ate it slowly, enjoying the mix of sweet and salty. I kept walking, and I saw two street dancers performing in the middle of the square. They flipped and spun on the ground, and a crowd cheered loudly. I clapped and even dropped $1 in their box. One of them smiled and shouted, "Thank you, girl." It made me feel part of the city. Another night, I joined a small boat ride on the Hudson River. The cool air touched my face as the boat moved. I could see the Statue of Liberty glowing in the dark, and behind me, the skyline of Manhattan sparkled. People whispered softly, as if they didn't want to break the beauty of that moment. I held my phone to take a photo, but then I stopped. I wanted to remember it with my eyes, not only with my screen. Later, I walked near Broadway. I could not afford an expensive ticket to a show, but I stood outside one theater and watched people walk in, dressed in their best clothes. A man selling cheap tickets asked if I wanted to try. I smiled and said maybe another time. Instead, I sat on the steps nearby, listening to a street musician playing the violin. His music filled the night, and it felt like I had my own private concert. One night I joined a group tour in Chinatown. The guide told us stories of the old streets, the shops, and the food stalls. I tried dumplings for the first time. They were hot and soft, and I almost burned my tongue, but I laughed at myself. The man next to me, a tourist from Texas, said, "First time, huh?" And we both laughed. New York nights were never silent. Sirens, music, voices, laughter, everything mixed together. Sometimes it felt too loud, but it also felt alive. Standing under the bright lights, eating simple food, listening to music, and watching people live their lives, I felt something I had never felt before. I was not just a visitor. I was part of this city, even if only for a short time. That night, I whispered to myself, "Maddy, you made it here." And for the first time, I truly believed it. Chapter 6: Dreams in the City That Never Sleeps. New York never sleeps, and I felt the same that night. I sat by my hotel window looking at the skyline full of lights. It felt like every light had its own story. I whispered to myself, "Maddy, you are really here. This is real." My heart was heavy, but also full. I thought about all the things I had seen. The parks, the subway rides, the pizza slices, the people rushing past me. I felt like New York had taken me into its arms and shown me its truth. Life is hard, but it is also beautiful. The next morning, I wanted to live like a true New Yorker. I bought a bagel and coffee from a street cart. The man at the cart smiled and said, "Have a great day, sweetheart." His accent was strong, and I loved how warm it felt. I ate while walking down the street like everyone else, careful not to spill my coffee. A group of kids rushed past me, laughing loudly. I couldn't help but smile. The city was noisy, but the noise made me feel alive. Later, I decided to visit the Statue of Liberty. On the ferry, I stood by the railing, the wind pushing my hair back. I held my phone and recorded a video saying, "Mom, I made it. I'm standing here in front of the Statue of Liberty." I imagined my family back home watching and smiling. When the statue came closer, my eyes filled with tears. It wasn't just a tourist spot. It was a symbol of hope. I thought of all the people who had come here with dreams, and now here I was, carrying mine. In the evening, I went back to Times Square. The screens were brighter than before, and the crowd was even bigger. A man dressed as a superhero asked if I wanted a photo. I laughed and said no, but secretly, I wanted to remember him forever. Then, a woman gave me a flyer for a Broadway show. I couldn't afford a ticket, but I kept the flyer in my bag as a memory. Sometimes the little things mean the most. That night, I walked alone along the Brooklyn Bridge. The wind was cold, but the view was magical. Cars rushed under me and the skyline shone across the water. I whispered, "Thank you, New York." My journey had been full of small events, some easy, some hard, but all of them gave me courage. I knew tomorrow I would leave the city, but a part of me would always stay here. My heart was lighter now. I had seen the beauty, the chaos, and the dreams. And most of all, I had learned something important. Even if life is tough, we must keep walking. Because one day, just like in New York, the lights will shine for us too. If you reached here, thank you for walking with me through my journey in New York. Life is not just about big dreams. It's about small moments that stay with us forever. If my story touched your heart, please like, share, and comment below. And remember, never stop dreaming.